Thank you. We've got a surprisingly pleasant surprise turnout today. I'm very happy that we have this turnout. I think it's really important. Obviously, this is an important issue. And I want to thank each and every one of you for your thoughts and for being here to kind of lend your thoughts and vote, frankly, for this pivotal moment. The agenda today is very simple, and you'll be happy to know it's not going to be a long meeting. The agenda, first and foremost, is narrow. We're going to keep it focused only on the dues increase and questions that maybe pertain to that question of a dues increase. We are going to not talk a lot up here. In fact, I'm going to kind of give a recap as to the proposal that's on the table. Also, share with you a little bit of new information that's come up in the last, say, 3 or 4 weeks that kind of impacts the budget and impacts maybe your decisions on how you vote. The first thing I'd like to say, get out of the way, is that it's a formal question of quorum. There is no doubt we have a quorum for this, so this is a vote for sure. In fact, had only 10 people showed up today, the votes we got back in terms of proxies was sufficient for a quorum. So this is an actual vote. There's no doubt about that. We can set that issue aside. I started to say I'm going to speak as little as possible today, try and get through the high points of this proposal. And I hope to do that inside of 15 minutes at the most, because I'd like to reserve pretty much the balance of an hour to for anybody to come to the podium and express their thoughts and their questions. We would like to have, if they're going to express thoughts rather than questions, keep your thoughts succinct, respectful, and let your thoughts be known, but make time and keep quiet for the people at the podium, and let's keep everything very respectful. The other thing I'd like to say about questions from the podium is we will do our best to answer every question. We're not cutting this meeting short necessarily to truncate any questions. The point of this meeting isn't for me to talk. It's to get your questions answered, because when you leave here today, you're going to cast the ballot, and it's going to count. So if we run an hour after this initial, reintroduction, that's fine. People can vote anywhere they want in the middle and leave, but the point is this board will be here to answer questions reasonably as long as it takes to get everybody answered. So with that, I'd like to just reintroduce you to the salient points of the proposal. The proposal, as you know probably, is looking for an increase to $240 per month, up from $100 per lot per year. And what you've got is you got a chart in front of you that is a proposed budget. Now, there seems to be some confusion in the public forums about what a budget is versus actual numbers. I'd like to just say this. This is a pro forma budget. There is not a lot of detail in it, and there isn't going to be a lot of detail in it until we know what we're working with. So that's the first point I'd like to make. The second thing I'd like to say about the budget is it's this upcoming year to the best of our ability at the time it was drafted. This is not an annual year-over-year budget. The numbers within the total will shift year over year depending on priorities and needs of the association and the lake. It's, to me, common sense, but there's a lot of folks out there that are concerned that we are locked into these numbers and that they are going to be, every penny in every category is going to get spent somehow. That's just not how this board operates. It's not how any board, frankly, should operate. We should always be spending as little as possible whenever we can. But the problem we've got in this association right here and right now is that we are woefully underfunded for contingencies, for insurance, for dam fund contributions and the like. So, I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions on that front. I'm welcome to answer them to the best of my ability, and we'll get to them in a little bit. The other two things I'd like to take care of before we get on to questions.
Can I?
I'm sorry.
I have a ballot that didn't get signed, that got picked up today.
Okay.
That person, if they're still here.
Mr. Plow,
Mr. Plow?
Douglas Plow?
Yeah.
Okay,
you need to sign your ballots. And
thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Sorry for the interruption.
That's okay. You'll need a pen?
Moving on, again, this is really about your questions, and I want to allot 80% of the time today, if not more, to those questions. But I do want to address a handful of misperceptions. Frankly, is a generous term. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about what this board is trying to accomplish and why. And there's a lot of misinformation, and I'd like to start with a simple one. Some folks out there started to circulate a document that implied a 5% increase year over year, compounded out 30 years. Our dues would be some astronomical number. I'd like to put that to rest right here and now. At $240, the bylaws call for a limitation on any dues increase, CPI or otherwise, to be zero. There will be no dues increase provided after this, provided we have $65,000 in operating funds as of a certain date, which is June 30th per the bylaws. So this notion that we are going to spin out into this endless 5% increase is absurd. And I want everybody to understand, first and foremost, the practical implication of that is that if we raise the dues to $240, you probably aren't going to see a dues increase for a decade. Because there's no excuse then for this board ever to fall below that threshold in terms of operating capital. It's a common sense answer to a silly question, and I'm sorry to phrase it so bluntly, but I have to, because it's absurd. The second thing I want to address is the question of this dam. There's some folks out there that are suggesting that this dam is different than Sanford, and it's different than Wixom. And it's different in such a way that we aren't somehow in need of the funding that we're proposing as this board. Now let me start with a concession. It isn't Wixom, it isn't Sanford, because those dams will require millions of dollars to resurrect and rebuild, and they're years away from doing it, okay? We are talking about a budget that is well under, in the neighborhood of $500,000 over the next 5 years. And that is a very realistic number for the sort of costs that we're likely to incur for that dam. You can argue about the details, you can say it's $100,000 too much or too little, but the bigger point is that's the order of magnitude. In 5 years, 3 to 7 per our engineer, we are going to have to invest $250,000 to $325,000, and that's his best estimate right now, okay? We have that alone, again, ought to put everybody a little bit back in their heels and understand that we are not living in the 70s or the 80s. These are real costs, they're coming, and we better be ready for them. The second thing you need to know, and this is brand new, I almost don't want to say this, but I'm going to say it because it's the truth. Our insurance premiums are going from about $19,000 or $20,000 for liability to $37,000 this year. Now, we've had why? The largest reason why is because underwriters are scared of dams. And frankly, they don't care that we're different than Sanford. They don't care that we're not Wixom. All they know as underwriters is that they do not want the risk of dams. And so insurance coverage is going to go up. It's going to get pretty brutal before it gets better. And we need to have the funds to take care of those things. And that's a good example, frankly, of something that most people don't, unless you're in the insurance industry, you didn't even see that coming, okay? This board was at least common sense enough to know that those problems on those other lakes were gonna raise our premiums, but I will tell you, I did not know myself the order of magnitude. We are now paying 10 times more for liability coverage than we were, say, 5 years ago.
45%.
So there's that issue. And the last thing I want to address before I start opening it up to questions is this. There's been circulating discussion on certain social media of a notion of a special assessment, as opposed to this manner of dealing with things. And I'm going to break it down as best I know how. First of all, this wasn't discussed on social media because I don't think anybody out there that's talking about it is willing to get down into the details. But it's unclear to me whether or not the counter proposals, if you want to call them that, have to do with special assessment districts, which require a court process at the city and state level, I'm sorry, city and county level. In which case, if you go that route, frankly, the engineering and the legal costs of getting that done, we can't even fund the ability to set that up. It's a long time frame, it's a legal process, and we have zero money in the budget for legal expense. So the idea that we're going to set up a SAD at this county or the city level is a little bit of an empty promise because we don't have the resources to even look into that. The other two things that come with that you need to understand is that those sorts of things require 67% of a vote of every homeowner, not a quorum, not a meeting of you folks, but you have to have 67 or more percent of every single homeowner to accomplish an SAD. So, you know, people can talk about SADs as an option, but they are conveniently leaving out the details. And the last thing you need to know about an SAD is that more than likely, and this is not for sure, but more than likely, an SAD would require us to turn over maintenance and the liability, frankly, of the dam to the city and the county. Okay? Now, some folks might say, well, that sounds like a pretty good deal. And I would put it right back to you and ask, was it a good deal for Wixom? Was it a good deal for Sanford? Because that's the sort of entities that are now facing the brunt of it. And guess who's left out in the cold waiting for it to be resolved? The homeowners. In my personal opinion, and I believe the board is agreeable to this, I think it's a mistake, frankly, to pursue that sort of an SAD. Now, the second perhaps they were talking about answer would be a special assessment made by the association itself. That's an association special assessment. And again, nobody has bothered to differentiate what they're talking about. They just want to complain about what we're doing wrong. But an association special assessment goes something like this. First of all, the bylaws are not very clear about whether you can do, say, a 10-year assessment. In other words, make a decision today as a board that binds the residents to, say, 5 or 10 years of $50 or $100 increments. There's nothing that's that clear. And I guarantee you that if we were to have proposed that, that's one of the first objections we'd hear. You can't do that. You can only make a special assessment for 1 year in one annual meeting, and in which case we'd be facing about a $500 or $600 per home assessment just to end up with the funds that we're looking to collect in a slower pace at a more sensible rate with the proposal that's on the table. So I would suggest to you that the noise out there about those two approaches is more noise than reality. I'm not saying they're not without merit, but the point is they're not as simple as that. And the last thing I'll put out there for you all is this thought. The dam is the most important, probably the critical aspect of our lake. But as everybody sitting in this room knows, we have had year-over-year issues funding lake treatments. We have a perennial discussion and argument about what we're doing about erosion and shoreline preservation, to which we have zero resources as an association. We have allocated nothing and cannot allocate anything to any of these other legitimate concerns. And if we create a budget that somehow, God forbid, we have too much money 5 or 6 years from now, we can start to address some important things that maybe not aren't as high as the priority of the dam. This is not different than running a good household, folks. This is a matter of putting your finances in order and being proactive instead of reactionary. Right now, all we can do as a board without a dues increase is be reactionary. We are struggling to pay for the things that we're paying for. We are neglecting a lot of things that we should address. And most importantly, it comes back to this dam fund. The dam needs to be funded. There's no getting around it, in my opinion, okay? And you can all take issue with it, and I'm welcome to take questions. But that, in a nutshell, is the proposal. And this idea that we're gonna spiral out into continuous increases year over year, and where does it end? I'm telling you, in all likelihood, for the next decade, it ends right here. But we need to make a decision today, and I'm asking you, as a board, to vote for this increase, because it'll set this association on a path where property values are not in question anymore, insurance won't be an issue, and so on and so forth. So to that, I'm about done. I've tried to make my case over the last few months. This board has worked very hard, notwithstanding a lot of doomsday prayers and naysayers out there that want to suggest that this board hasn't given enough thought to what we're doing, okay? I'm happy to have questions, and I'm happy to answer them, and I'm going to start right here and now. Yes, ma'am.
Can you get a microphone to these people or something?
Yeah, anybody that wishes to speak must please come up here, identify themselves at the podium. That would be great if you could.
I'm Cindy Kokensparger, and I live on Springwood Drive. And I just want a clarification, if I understood you correctly, that if our budget falls below 60 or 65,000, you said on June 31st, then the board can increase by a small percent. Did I understand that right?
Yes. Well, I'm gonna clarify that. First of all, your microphone isn't either lit up or because I don't think anybody could hear it back there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think it just has to be.
While she's doing that, the question that she's asking goes back to the question of what I ended with. Future dues increases, the likelihood of future dues increases in light of the provision in the bylaws that calls for there to be no increases provided we have operating fund balance of $65,000 or more at June 30th of the assessment year. So the answer, quite frankly, is you're right. You're not going to see an increase after this, provided the board has $65,000 in operating capital at the end of June every year. And frankly, if that can't happen, then you need to replace all of us, because that's a pretty easy target to make at this point.
Well, my comment about that is, to me, that means that those assessments that we've had increases in for the last several years mean our balance has fallen below that, correct?
That's correct.
That is frightening to me, that our balance got below $60,000 for an association of this size.
Yeah.
So I didn't understand that in the bylaws, and thanks for clarifying.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to come up and ask any questions? Please, now's the time.
I'm gonna get this.
Oh.
I came here thinking, oh, I say anything. Sheila Raymond, over on Matchwood. 2 or 3 things. Number one, thank you for all of your work. This has got to be a very, very difficult thing to do, because there's going to be a lot of people that have their feelings. Number 2, I have a cousin who lived in the Sanford area. It is devastating that dam broke. Devastating. We also live by Rainbow Lake, that's right off from 27. They were told, the people there were told, and this is by St. John's. I don't know if you know where Rainbow Lake is. It's a beautiful, beautiful lake. They were told they've got to set up money for the to make sure that everything is a-okay with their dam. Did not do it. It broke. And it was devastating driving around there and seeing all of these beautiful, beautiful homes, and you see no water, just none. And they lost it for a few years. It's now back, but how they got it back and what all of that entailed, I don't know. So I think people really have to realize that. I know this is a little bit more of what we have to pay. We belong to an association at home, and we pay $100 a year for mowing the lawn. That's it. Just mowing the lawn, $100 a year. And I just think we need to get this money set up. I know it's a little bit of a chunk, but thank goodness it's not $240 a month. I just want to make sure that.
Yeah. Thank you, Sheila, for your comments.
Okay, thank you.
No, I'm not going to do anything that doesn't. Yes, sir.
Pete Marino, Briarwood. This is maybe just an ignorant question on my part, but I just want to clarify. If that dam were to let go today, right now, completely, does our lake drain like those other lakes?
Yeah, as far as I understand, I mean, I'm not an engineer, but I think that's the answer, yeah.
Okay.
Well, not only that, Pete, but then we have the water that flows into Denton Creek towards Houghton Lake.
Right.
And all those homes along the creek suffer, and we have to cover that liability.
Okay. All right. That's something I wasn't aware of. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Stacy Smith and we live on Wildwood. The question that I have is, of the $240 increase, how much of that is going to be set aside? And is it in a separate fund that nobody can touch?
These are great questions, and the answers are simple. The way the bylaws amendment that goes hand in hand with this approval is written, 30% of every annual year's collections will be set aside in an interest-bearing separate fund for the dam, so that, you know, it's basically a fixed percentage of assessments every year. So it's, in this case, it's about $70,000 a year at this assessment level. And again, this is not something that's going to go up or out of control, because the bylaws don't necessarily, they don't require a CPI increase. The only reason we've had that is because we've had woefully insufficient basic funds. And frankly, that's another thing that's driving our insurance costs up too. An insurer, the underwriters look at a couple, three things. First of all, the dam claim experience they've had over the last few years has driven insurers out of the marketplace. So insurance premiums are going up. You've got that going on, but you've also got, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
I just want to know how much was being set aside.
Yes, well, right now we have a dam fund that we inherited of $25,000. We have another savings account right now with about $35,000 that, you know, internally, in my view, that's been set aside as part of the dam fund. So you've got about $60,000 arguably in savings right now for a cost that's going to range between, you know, again, $250 to $325 5 years out, and that's in today's dollars, okay? Another thing we have to do is, even though you guys are not facing a dues increase based on CPI, it doesn't mean our costs aren't going to go up. So $1 today is not $1 5 years from now, it's not $1 10 years from now. But we're not looking to have increases past this 240. That's the goal here. Thank you.
And then I just wanted to add too to your question, Stacy, that the set-aside funds for the dam fund, the only way those funds could be used for another catastrophic event is if we went through another motion of this and had another vote to reallocate those funds. That's what the bylaws change will say, is that we cannot use that dam fund for any other reason than the dam without a 60% of the majority vote allocating those funds.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Al Walker, and I live on Matchwood. And my wife and I bought property in 1983 on the lake, 40 years ago. At that time, the dues were around $50. So since the last 40 years, the dues have gone up about $64, which has been a hell of a savings for all of us. But it just emphasizes the need that Dave's been talking about, the lack of money that we got to even exist today, let alone what the future holds for us. I'm a retiree, 23 years. I'm on a fixed budget, like many of you in here. And those that are still working are probably still not making up for the inflation that we've got going on in this country today, so you're still losing money. So I know it's a tough time. But as several people have said, without the dam, we don't have a lake, okay? That's serious. And many people have mentioned about Sanford Lake and Wixom. I visited there. We have some friends, acquaintances that live there. And it's devastating to look out there and see their docks sitting in grass, not water. They can't sell their property. They're controlled by the county or the state on what they can do about the dam. It's not feasible. Way back when I was on the board, we looked at having the county involved. And that meant we had to put them on the board. And we made a decision at that time not to do that. In parallel, two other things. Lake management. We haven't talked much about that. We talked a little bit about erosion and the weeds. But they go hand in hand. Our erosion, when the lake was formed back in the early 60s, I think the deepest part of the lake was around 22 feet at the dam. Back in 2005, we measured it and it was 15 feet. I don't know what it is today, but it's sure a lot shallower because all that erosion that we get from the shoreline goes into our lake. That in turn causes greater weed control or weed growth, if you will. The sun penetrates down to the lake. And we are not like a lot of other northern Michigan lakes. Our lake is full of leaves. That's good nutrients. And the lake and the leaves cause that. That's all natural. We've got a boating issue in many cases. When the lake was formed back in the early 60s, I'm sure they didn't visualize we were going to have jet skis and high-powered boats out there. But that's a fact. We've got it. And we've got to deal with it. So I think what the board is doing, I give them a lot of credit. They're aggressively addressing this. This hasn't been addressed in a long time, and it needs to be addressed. And please vote yes.
Thank you, Al.
Hi there, Jody Cascadden, 1075 Lake James Drive. My issue with this whole thing, I agree with most of what you're saying. However, I'm a backlotter. Everybody knows what backlotters are. I have 5 lots, 4 of them are totally unimproved. Bought it that way, keeping it that way because I don't want houses. Why should I pay 5 times what somebody that has 1 lot on the lake is paying when I don't even actually technically have the same rights to the lake?
So that's a great question, Jody. Currently, the bylaws are written such that every lot pays the same regardless of its situation as to a backlot status or a lakefront status. It is an issue that it's a valid question, although the short, simple answer is that the bylaws presently do not permit it to be billed any other way. Now, that's another discussion for another day. Frankly, I think that when this board reconvenes for its next year, my personal intention is to dig into the bylaws. It was one of the things that I was dead set on trying to fix, or improve, I should say, when I got here. And we have had preliminary discussions about that. So the short answer is it's a fair question. But presently, the bylaws don't permit anything to be done any differently. So it's almost a situation where you got to live with what we're at, where we're at, and as we approach a question of bylaws in the coming months, it's an issue that I think is worth visiting, but it again would take a 60% vote of a quorum of this membership to change that situation. So.
Hopefully, Greg Husk, I live over in Lake James 1, Shadow Lake, whatever you want to call it. This 30% is, it's been brought up online, is never ending. So how big is this fund going to get before we rein that in? Because obviously, we're not going to spend that much, hopefully, over the time. So
yeah, that's a great question, Greg. Thanks for asking that question, because I didn't cover that. So the question is theoretically, at some point in time, you would reach a point where the dam fund was in excess of what might be required. Now, what Greg is alluding to is a very real possibility, but in order for us to get there, we would have to be 7 years out or so, because we already know we're going to have costs in the range I've already discussed. Now, there is a point in time where if everything goes well and we have lower costs and less costs of repair, we can make a decision as a group, not as a board. See, this is why I think the way it's drafted is quite advantageous to this association. This association should make the decision at the appropriate time to reallocate funds, excess funds, in a manner it sees fit. Not 9 people, not 7 people on a board, or whatever our board is. We should not have the ability to say, look, there's $500,000 there and we're only going to need 200 next year. Let's do something with it. No. I shouldn't be able to do that. This board as a whole shouldn't be able to do it. We should be required, as it's written now in the proposal, to come back to you to reallocate excess funds. Now, the last thing I'll say to it is this, Greg. If you get 6 or 7 years out, and let's say we were perfect in our predictions, that we spent only 300 and we now have 100,000 or less left, okay? And now we've got this $70,000 that's accruing every year again. It presumes that you're never going to have costs 15 years out. There's maintenance that's going to be required on this dam of significant consequence, not just weeding and mowing and putting boards in. This dam is a living, breathing thing that is going to have to be taken care of over, say, the next decades. So Greg's question is perfectly legitimate, and it's right to ask what happens in the moments in time in the future where there's excess funds. There's 2 answers. Quite frankly, it boils down to this. I would argue you need to have a rolling fund that is always accumulating a little bit even after expenditures, because you're going to always have maintenance. And secondly, if by chance we are fortunate enough to have excess funds, everybody here gets the opportunity to come and say, look, we will vote to reallocate it to erosion control or whatever the issue of the day is. We can't predict. But the idea that we're going to have this pile of money that is just sitting there with nothing to do, look, you could all vote for a rebate. I mean, that's beyond me. I probably won't be here, okay? But I know what I'm trying to do, and that is prepare for the next 10 years or so. And when I leave, I want to have money set aside to deal with contingencies. Prior boards did the best they could. They were all working very hard too, but I have to point out, they spent the money that other people saved, okay? Everybody that's out there right now that's complaining about what this board is trying to accomplish, we're very good at spending the funds, and I'm not saying they misspent them, but they spent money that was saved by prior boards to them. So it's very easy for some folks to get up here and say, this is too much, or you're not doing it in good faith, or whatever the arguments might be. They can do that if they want. But I would point out that they did a good job spending the money that somebody else saved. Thank God we had it. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you. It was more, I wasn't saying you're gonna misspend the funds or anything.
No, it's-
It's just, it's so open-ended.
It is.
There should be some mechanism in there to keep that.
I agree. And the mechanism, Greg, is the membership. It's
what
not
you're
us.
saying. Okay.
Yes.
So,
If I were out there in the audience, frankly, that's the only way I'd have it. I don't want any 9
understand that,
people
but
deciding how to
here's the
spend
thing.
that kind of money.
You guys control the checkbook, okay? The immediate checkbook.
Yes.
Okay, so to speak.
Yeah.
So when something comes up to spend money on, you're not gonna have time to come to the members and go, hey, we wanna do this. It's already passed, it's already gone. So how do you, again, it's a
Well,
bureaucratic thing, I get it.
Yeah, it's a bit of a chicken and the egg issue that you're driving, because you gotta have the money to deal with contingencies, and everybody, the counter argument always is, well, you know, why do you need money if you don't know what you're gonna spend it on? I mean, this is kind of a recurring theme everywhere, always, and it's a legitimate kind of a debate.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Thank you, Greg.
Hi, Sarah Roberts, Lake James Drive.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, 2 issues that I'd like you to address, please. The first is the rumor mill regarding a property management company that the board might be looking into.
That's an easy one.
And the second one is, could you clarify please, the $30,000 into the dam fund is or is not counted to the $65,000 that, you know what I'm
Yes,
saying?
I do.
Thank you. Thank you.
So the first question is an easy one. This board has no desire or plans or even looking into hiring a property management company. I'm just going to leave it at that. The board is doing the best it knows how to do, and frankly, yeah, you're going to need an outside accountant every now and then. You might need an outside engineer to work on the dam, but the notion that we are looking to offload the management of the association or the board's business to an outside entity is silly. It's not happening, okay? Secondly, the other question she raised was clarification about the 30%, and I believe the question was that...
Well, if the CPI
It's a separate fund
is the...
from the 65.
Yes, okay. So here's what you've got. The $65,000 has to do with unallocated non-dam funds. That's operating funds. You have to have that, per the bylaws, at a $65,000 or better balance at the end of June for there to be no dues increase. And as I've already said, I think with this dues increase, you are very unlikely, it's almost inconceivable to me to not have that kind of a balance anymore, okay? The $65,000 is not the dam fund. The dam fund is separate from that $65,000. I hope that answers the question. Yes?
My name is Loretta Adams. I'm on Atwood. For many years, I came to the meetings and Mary Jo sat up here and said, we can't get enough board members. We can't get enough board members. Please help, please help, please help. And she's right, it's difficult and nobody helps. Everybody gets on social media and complains, but nobody puts their money where the mouth is. So I did spend some time. I spent a lot of time looking into property management companies because that's my business. I'm a property manager. I couldn't find anybody in Michigan, Ohio, or Indiana that would even talk to a Lake Homeowners Association. They said it's way too much work and way too little money. So if we didn't need one, I wouldn't have looked into one. But if we can't get, you know, my thought was we can't get help from anybody, why not look at it? Why not outsource it? But it's not an option, period. Nobody wants to do it. That's where that came from. I suggested as an option to try to solve our problem.
2 years ago.
Not for any other reason. It was just, look, we got a problem, how can we solve it? And it's not an option. Thank you.
Thanks, Loretta.
Anybody else with any questions?
Stu McDonald, 360 East Nestle, back on Shadow Lake.
Hi, Stuart.
Back in 2016, we had work on the dam. Could you let us know what they did that versus what we're gonna do different.
Yes. That's a good, yeah.
And that also went over budget, to my understanding, that we paid, so.
Yes.
Just wondering what the difference is, so everybody knows.
So let me preface and Stuart's asking what the difference is that we did 7 or 8 years ago versus what is entailed in the coming years. I'm going to preface all of it by saying we arrived in 2016, late 2017. It was right after the first round of dam improvements got done. But here's my understanding. All the work that was done in the years preceding, and I believe it was 2015 and maybe part of 16, not sure, had to do with the back side of the dam, the down outflow side of the dam. We reconstructed a large concrete encasement for the discharge tubes that were to carry the flow of lake water downstream. And if you go to the dam and you look over the fence, you can see clearly what's new. There's a lot of new large concrete and piping and so on and so forth. And all of that happened, but none of the front side of the dam was worked on, to my understanding. When our engineers went to work last year on our annual 3-year review, it was found that the front end, the intake side of the dam, and frankly the dam mechanisms itself is still all original. But my sense is that what we're dealing with now is on the intake side, the intake tubes are starting to fail and rust and degrade to a point where if you don't control the intake side, you're going to end up with a lot of erosion and sorts of problems around the earthen side of the dam that's being held back. So the short answer is the new work, or the upcoming work, has to do with the inside of the dam on the lakeside facing the dam, whereas the work that was done in 15 and 16 exclusively had to do with the discharge side. As to it being over budget, it was before me. I do know, again, I'll say this, we were all fortunate that the preceding boards to those expenditures had the foresight to see it coming. And that's all we're trying to do here.
Didn't they put a whole new entire tube through that was, 3-4 foot in diameter from the front side all the way to the back?
Yes, they did. Yes, I believe so. There's folks in the audience here that took that project on, and they certainly have the knowledge, more so than we do. And that's one of them. There he is.
Yes, Jim Gaddy, Aspenwood Drive. I was involved with the dam for a couple of years. The inlet pipe has been replaced at one time. A lot of work was done there. The floodgates have been replaced at one time. I'm not saying that they don't need to be replaced again, but there is a ton of information down at the pole barn about our dam. Every time an engineer has come in and said our dam needs work, we have done it. That's why our dam is in satisfactory condition.
Yeah.
Okay, because everything that was told for us to do, we did. As an association, not as a board, as an association. All previous boards have taken care of the dam. I'm all for taking care of the dam. It is our lake.
Yeah.
But somebody has to do a little bit more research on the dam to find out what's going on. That's our dam guy. I've shown him where all the information is. Have you been down there and looked at all the information? Okay, then you should know that the inlet tube has been replaced. I'm not saying it doesn't need work, but
Jim,
it's a good point, Jim.
but Jim, what we understand is the concrete around the inland tube,
correct.
from the water beating,
That is something that needs to be addressed.
that is what has been brought to our attention by the inspectors last October. And through the years and through the erosion that's happening there, they can see that all that concrete is going to need to be addressed in 3 to 5 years. And they've given us information about that. We're willing to share that information with you because you have had so much association with the dam. But those are some of the recommendations that we're going on and based on some of this information we're sharing. We understand that the dam has been maintained throughout the past years. And I was here when you did do the big exit tube and all of that. We own property, we've been here since 2010. So I understand what this board, or these previous boards and the associations have been doing. But what's facing the lake with the concrete and the land and the dirt is what is looking to be repaired.
Correct, the scaling. When I was on the board, we were told that 5 to 7 years that needed work done. So we reinstituted the dam fund. We were the ones that started the dam fund back up, because we knew we needed the money.
Right.
So 2 years in a row, we put money in. The only thing that kind of irritates me is I haven't seen you guys put any money into the dam fund. And if it's that important,
Yeah.
$5,000, $1,000.
You know what?
Something.
Jim, you're not entirely wrong, but the point is there has been zero extra money since my arrival, and that's not changed a whole lot. And if the argument is we should have put $2,000 aside, then I guess you're right, but that doesn't solve the issues at hand.
I don't know.
Are there any other questions out there?
I just like to say something.
One other thing on that, did anybody talk to poor ass contractors who did the work at all? I mean, have you guys addressed Jimmy at all? Jim, poor ass contractors that did the damn work, have you talked to him at all?
So my understanding, and again, I'm not everybody up here, but I'll speak for myself. I understand him to be retired and gone from the area. Now, if somebody has his phone number and he's local and he wants to talk, I'm happy to talk to him, but I don't understand him to be available any longer. Yes, ma'am. Don't be afraid. Come on up. No, listen. I'll just say I'm very appreciative of the turnout today. Thank you.
Well, I am afraid. I'm very afraid because I know a lot of people that were on those lakes, and those lakes, there's nothing there. The houses, and this insurance you talk about, things that's just for the dam. But if all the houses are gone, and like, is there any guarantee? Because I was under the impression you could put you're not going to put a whole dam in, right?
No.
Just, okay.
Yeah.
Now, eventually, if that does go, I just want everybody to be aware of that, that the lake's gone. The lake's gone. And the other problem was, I think basically is, I was worried about the money being like tied up in a real good knot just for that,
Yeah.
if they go through with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as long as it's being repaired, maybe it's not as, did anybody have an actual, did they examine it thoroughly, and do you know how much it's gonna cost?
So, you want to speak to that, Tom?
Yeah, can everybody hear me? Yeah. I got a cold, so my voice is not great. As Jim pointed out, Mr. Gaddy, I took on the responsibility, if you want to call it that, to be the damn man. So everybody can get damn mad at me because I'm the damn man. But I will tell you, I'm not an engineer, but I can see with my own eyes what's happening at that dam. And for the most part, it's gorgeous. What they redid, Mr. Porath, and I knew Jim quite well, as a matter of fact, they did a terrific job on the back side of the dam. And the exit tube, whatever else you want to call it, is about 8 foot in diameter. It's huge. You can literally drive a car down it. So that part is great. And it's encased in cement that's almost as high as this room. It's huge. So I'm not worried about that side. It's the front side. And when you stand on there's like a grating that goes across the front, and you need that, and the guy that actually is doing the physical labor right now, his name is Tom Schmaltz. Tom's in Florida right now. But he showed me how those, the dam gates, I guess you want to call them, are on a mechanism where you put a machine on it and it twists and it raises or lowers. And we can drop the level of that lake significantly by pulling those things out, which we're probably gonna have to do this fall, because we want the group that did the inspections, their name is Spicer, no relation to Spicer's Boat City, by the way. They've already told us that the work needs to be done on the front side of the dam, and when you stand there and look at it, the cement has worn just from the water going over it. And so you can see real quickly what needs to be done. Now, the question is, how much work has to be done? And that's where we need to get the engineers, and I don't know for sure, but I think they're affiliated one way or another with the Corps of Engineers, the military branch. The government takes care of that. Wow, the government does a hell of a job for us, right? I'm not going to get into politics, but I'm not too happy with what's happening with inflation, because inflation is killing us. And all you got to do is watch the news every night, and they're quick to tell you what's inflation doing. I'm surprised the stock market is as strong as it is, thankfully. But my point being is, we know that this has to be done. And we don't want to be another Sanford Lake or Wixom Lake, and there was a third one. Thank you. So, and our dam, even if it should fail, wouldn't be as catastrophic simply because there's not that much down below that would be damaged. But keep this in mind, if the dam were to fail, one of the things that would be damaged almost for sure is M55. You know where Kabinski's is? Look where the stream comes down through there. That's where that water would go. And while we're a small lake, it's only what, a mile and a half, 2 miles long? There's still a terrific amount of water, and you know what water does once it starts cutting into dirt. So that's what our concern is. I am not happy about this increase personally. Like Jody pointed out, he's got lots that are back lotters. Well, guess what? I'm his neighbor, and I got 3. However, I've come to realize, I'm sorry folks, we need to look at this, and this board is only your personal people to oversee the day-to-day business. But we come to you with what we think are the necessary requirements to run this association. So you folks are the governing body, if you want, or as this lady said, the managerial body of our lake association. You guys are. So it's up to you to make the decision. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Tom. And
Now, is there, do you have a price set up now? Have they not done the pricing yet?
no, where we're at right now is we have had a standard annual, every 3-year inspection, and Spicer engineers are, clearly qualified and in the business of making these recommendations. The next step is that we need to pay for a study, a further study by Spicer to, in better detail, evaluate exactly what we need to have done, what the scope of that work would be. At that point, once you know that, then you go out and get bids, because right now it's a guesstimate. I mean, it's a range, which we've discussed ad nauseum, right? But we will refine those numbers as we get a better study done. And it will probably take the next 12 months just to get an answer to your question, and that is, how much exactly will it cost?
That's what I got an issue with. We don't have that amount.
We don't, and it's going to cost more money, frankly, than we.
I wish personally that all would have done before we're doing this.
Hey Dave, can you give her the range? I don't think she has.
Yeah, okay, it's a fair point. We do have a range, and that is between 250 and 325, and that is basically from Spicer's engineers, okay? But they are quick to put the big asterisk behind it because they haven't done further study. Again, it's always going to be a chicken and egg thing with budgets versus costs versus end costs, and why things go over budget or hopefully end up under budget. Because until you actually contract for the work and people get shovels in the ground, you never know precisely what the cost is going to be. We are, in the next couple of years, or in the next year or so, going to narrow down the scope of the work so that we can get accurate bids. And then, of course, the question becomes, is now the appropriate time? Do we need to do it now? And that's an open, separate question. So it's a process. And all I'm suggesting is that we be prepared to address the process with the financial backing that we all should want to have in order to do it right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Just quick, if
Yes, sir.
this does not pass, is there going to be another option or proposal to have less of an increase in dues?
So the question is, if this were not to pass, would there be something in the wings, you know, I'm presuming you mean next year?
Would it have to be next year?
Well, I will tell you this, and again, you're asking me to speculate on the outcome of this, which I'm a little reticent to do, but I can't say. I would have to ask rhetorically, you know, if this doesn't pass, then what? We've had this suggestion about special assessments. I've given you my reasons why I think that's not the optimal way to do it. And I also think that the question of a single lump sum special assessment would meet with the same kind of questions in the end anyway. For instance, if I said to you, okay, that didn't work, we're going to do a special assessment and it's going to be $500 per homeowner. We'd be back in this room having the same discussion, except now people would be saying, why didn't we spread the cost over more years? It's unreasonable for us to pay this all at once. I mean,
And my question is not that. It's,
yeah.
Would we come back with a proposal for not as extreme as a...
I don't see, I'm going to leave that as an open question because I think what it begs the question of is it presumes we're not going to get this passed, and I think we are.
And again, I'm not saying I'm voting no. I just want to know what option, because I'm sure other people, I've heard a lot of people say, why does it have to double? Why couldn't it be a 50% increase or whatever? So just want to get that out there.
The numbers don't lie.
One of the things that's going to happen if it doesn't pass with the new information around insurance is we will have to cut lots of other services, including lake management. So we're likely not going to be able to fully fund at the level we did last year our lake management processes. And I think we heard a lot of people who were very happy with the changes involved with lake management this year. And so if this doesn't pass, we'll have issues next year.
It's too bad you didn't raise them every year a little bit, then this wouldn't.
So I have a couple concerns.
Before you do, let me just ask, are there any more questions out there? I want to get through questions. Because
James Hammers, I'm on Briarwood.
Yes, sir.
I think everybody agrees the dam needs money. But what the big question is, what is that other 70% of this increase going to be going for?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question, and frankly, this is the first time it's come up. So we have on this budget an increase that is spread into other categories as well, and I'll just read them down because again, these are estimates and they are basically being put in place to allow for some room to do better things on the lake. And again, that's in everybody's own personal judgment whether they're justified or not. But we have decided in this new budget to start to set aside some funding every year for erosion control and shoreline preservation. Okay, we have nothing in the budget for that right now, at all. And so here's a companion question that I'll ask. I'll assume is coming and I'll answer. What if you don't spend the $12,000? My proposition would be that money goes into a savings account because maybe 2 or 3 years from now, when you get the permitting for whatever erosion control project you might have targeted, it might be a $36,000 project. The answer is always the same. All of these excess funds aren't necessarily excess in the context that these projects themselves are very expensive. So you set aside $12,000 every year under that category if you can. And then you've got the money 3 years from now so that when you do have the permitting in place, you can do those things. But if you don't plan or fund them now, there's no point in talking about them. There's other things on this thing. The pole barn has come up a little bit. The pole barn, we've put in $12,000 for this year. And yes, do you need to spend $12,000 every year? Probably not. But in the short term, we could spend twice that, frankly. That building is an asset that hasn't been taken very good care of. And that's nobody's fault. I'm not laying blame. I'm just suggesting that it's a building, and buildings require maintenance. It's going to require a roof. It's going to require, if it's going to get more utility, it needs some insulation. It needs some things that will enhance the value of that building for purposes of the association. And these are all legitimate things that cannot be pinpointed on a projected maybe budget 3 years in advance. But you have to start making room in these budgets for things that are common sense and frankly in the interest of the association. And that's what we're trying to get to today, is to make that leap, build some room into our overall budgets so that we can be better at what we do. We have another example. We have no money, relatively no money for any legal expenses. Now, if you want to go to an SAD, you got to hire a lawyer. If you want to collect money that are on delinquencies, eventually, to get it done right, you need a lawyer. Okay, I'm not suggesting we just start writing checks to lawyers, but the point is we have no money to take care of what is normally pretty typical admin costs. There is nothing in our budget today for those things. And I'm not looking to write checks everywhere, but I am suggesting to everybody here that we could do this a lot better. We'd be more professional, and our property values are at stake. In the end, your property values are pinned somewhat to the health and the management of the association at large. So I know that's not a precise answer, but the point is we need to make room in these budgets, and those numbers will move between categories. If they didn't, then we wouldn't be doing our job every month. Just like insurance isn't going to be 22.5. Guess what? It's 37. It's going to be 40 by the time we're done paying all the premiums. You have to have room in these budgets for contingencies. Yes, Marcy.
I have a question. Marcy Hayes from Driftwood Circle. The insurance costs are escalating. If we have reserves, are you getting any indication that that would affect our premium in a positive way?
So the question is our lack of funding impacting our ability to get coverage? And I think as a practical matter, that's true. Although we are, it's two things going on at once. Insurance costs over many markets, and I'm in commercial real estate. We are experiencing insurance increases everywhere because in the macro view, these larger insurance funds that are built off of equity and things like that, they have been diminished because of hurricanes and these dam failures more locally. And again, the funding for insurance coverage has gone down, and insurers want to get rid of that risk. So those costs are starting to rise. So there's that going on.
Good morning, Scott Munner's on Hazelwood. So a little bit more detail on what comes next. What can we expect to see next year? So like the fish stocking, and I see we used to stock the lake, right? So what plans do you have in place? What are the priorities? What will come first, if you will?
Good question.
So that's a good question. There's some smaller budget items that we're trying to reinstate, and I'm going to let Terry Bowen take that because he's most familiar with the fish fund. But in general terms, I think it's a matter of reinstituting some things that we have done in the past. I think there's a lot of people I've talked to that have been here a lot longer than me that has been a pretty routine thing over the last several years. But we haven't recently had the money to do it.
I mean, that's exactly the issue, is we've had zero money. We've had residents who have wanted to pitch in and put money together in order to do fish stocking. And fish stocking is not necessarily something that you can plan for year over year, because you have to work with the companies on what is available. And for us, I think the first step is to do an assessment of have the DNR or a company come in and actually do a survey of the fish in our lake, and then we can determine where we need to supplement with stocking. And typically, walleye, people like to fish for walleye, and our lake is not a lake that can self-support and breed walleye, so we do need to stock. But then fish that all of the other predator fish need to eat and to sustain themselves is something that we would look, feeder fish as well. Crappie is another thing that our lake fishermen like to catch, and it is a species that doesn't tend to reproduce well in our lake due to the shallowness of the lake and the water temperature. So that those two areas are what I hear from anglers, that they'd like to resume stocking. We haven't had any money, and by the time people can get around and pitch in for money, it tends to be too late to be able to stock the fish, because you have to work well in advance. If I know we have funds set aside, then we can plan for it. We can work with the companies in advance. We can get our orders in ahead of time and make sure that we're ready for them. This has been the problem the last couple of years, without any funds.
Are there any more questions out there?
My name is Larry Gardner. I live on Matchwood Drive. I have a question regarding the assessment. As the assessment is basically doubling it, what it has been in the past. And I see here that it looks like it's going to be an ongoing assessment forever and ever and ever. And I was wondering why that is and why it's not a yearly assessment. Each year bring it to the association or to the members and ask them for their opinion on if you need it, if you misspelled spending it correctly. And that way there, it's not just an automatic deal. And that's one of my concerns.
Yeah. So I think that what Larry's asking is this assessment a year over year, it's a new normal, or is it it's the baseline? And the answer is yes. I mean, in the way we've put it together, this is an annual increase that will be the new adjusted annual dues. Now, one thing that, at the risk of repeating myself, that you won't see is the CPI increase probably every year, because there's no excuse on the planet, frankly, for us not to be able to have the minimum funds necessary. So $240 a year for the foreseeable future is what we're looking at. I'm not sure I got all your question answered.
Yeah, well, that's I can appreciate you wanting it for year over year. I can appreciate you wanting it that increase year over year, but why can't you make it a yearly situation where you bring it to the association or to the members each year and ask them, can we have another increase? Because what you're looking at now is you're going to say 2 years from now, 3 years from now, oh, wait a second, we need a little bit more. And so then you say, okay, we're going to go and increase it again, as opposed to saying, okay, this year we want an increase, it'll be for 1 year. And then if we don't need that money, we'll drop back to the previous years until we do need it again. Or if we need more money, then we'll come back to you and say, okay, we need more next year. It could be a floating type of accumulation of money. But to say a blanket deal, here we want an assessment and an increase right now of this amount, and we're going to keep it till into perpetuity. That's what my question is.
Yeah, Larry, I get your question, and I got to tell you, I understand the question. I think the difference here is that what we're trying to do here is make a wholesale adjustment in the annual going forward dues in order to deal with inflation. I mean, what you're really alluding to is to come back every year and try and be precise and get in front of the membership at large and, for lack of a better term, come up with a number every year that the dues are going to be. It's a very difficult thing to assemble a lot of people in a room and have them, settle in on a number. Because I'll tell you what, if you put a number out there, even though you might have a room full of people that'll all agree you need an increase, you'll have 1,000, 100 different opinions about what the increase should be. So it gets to be very difficult things from an admin point of view to say, okay, we're gonna have that discussion in an open forum every year. And respectfully, I mean, I get your point. Nobody likes to see something locked in or an adjustment of this sort be permanent. But my suggestion to everybody from the get-go has been that we are really, really grossly overfunded for what our objectives ought to be. And so we need a major adjustment. I'm sorry, underfunded. Cut my own throat there. We are majorly underfunded. I mean, not to belabor it, but I'll just make the point Terry made. The insurance issue alone is going to cost us an additional $15,000 decline in our budget number for lake treatments. Is that because we all chose to do that? No, it's just an imperative. We have no money. Okay, and there are certain things you can't not have. Insurance is tenfold higher than it was 4 or 5 years ago. Now, does that mean it's always going to be that? We don't know. But we better plan to have the money available, and the only way we know how to do that is to make a wholesale adjustment in the base level of dues going forward, and deal with the dam at the same time.
All right.
Yeah. But
That was one of the questions. The other question is, it doesn't have to do with the dam, has to do with the launch. And the question is, why are keys being given out selectively to the boat hauling people around the community to take out a boat? I had a boat I had to take out. I had to go over, unlock the gate for them, then come back over and get my boat, then go back over there. And I'd like to know why it's selective, and that some organizations, some boat hauling people have a key or seem to have a key because they get in and out, and others don't. And I think that's, and the people that I had to haul my boat said that the association will not give it to them. And I'd like to find out why that is.
So a couple of things, Larry. First of all, it's a question that I think we'd like to defer to the end of the day, because I want to stay focused on dues-related questions. And I want to say that respectfully because it's a fair question, but before we address that, and I think we should address it at the very end.
Sounds fair. Thank you.
I just want to come back to the previous work that was done, that was like 7 years ago.
Yes, sir.
The lake was down, was it assessed then? Did we have some type of assessment then? And if you could share that with everybody. And also, I think if the dam needs work, we do need to do it.
Yeah.
I just wondered, there had to be an assessment done
Yeah,
at that
Stuart,
time.
you know what, I'm going to defer that to somebody who's been here longer. My understanding is that we had the money saved to do it, and that it didn't entail an increase or a special assessment at that time. But if that's incorrect.
At that time, we had the dam inspected before we put the tube in. The 7-inch tube was rushed, the 7-foot tube was rusty. We did not, nothing on the front was that great that needed any kind of repair. That's 7 years ago.
Yeah.
So we ended up doing the back end of the dam. We did not touch the dam at all. And did not have it inspected while the lake was down.
Thank you for those remarks. I think that I don't know that that was the question, but I do appreciate those comments. I'm going to go to the woman at the podium.
Kathleen Cascadden, 1075 Lake James. Now, it's to my understanding
that budgets are based off financial factuals. These would incorporate getting 3 bids for each section of a budget proposal. And then those budget proposals are all put into a group category. Now there's a thing called Freedom of Information Act. And I went on the website and I'm not seeing what we all need to see before a said budget is proposed. So we need 3 proposals for the dam repair. And those need to be put on the website so everybody as a whole can see and compare. And with these estimates from these companies, they have to do a breakdown of work, which we should all be able to see. And that gives us much better education on what we need to do, what our priorities are. In each of these segments on the diagram that I viewed, there wasn't anything further to validate these baselines. So what I am proposing is that we do just that. We need to get the proposals for our baselines and a breakdown of what each budget category needs to function and operate and what itemization everything is going for.
Those are all fair points to make, and I would suggest this, that first of all, a lot of what was said there I have to take issue with, because it goes back to the question of planning forward and having funding for things that lack detail. The second thing I have to take somewhat issue with is that this board is all made up of volunteers, and the workload that you just outlined, frankly, if you'd like to take it on, I will hire you on behalf of the board.
As a volunteer.
As a volunteer. And that, you know, I don't mean that glibly or disrespectfully, but you know,
And no,
when
I
you
actually
have,
take it as a compliment.
yeah, when I'm telling you, it's a very you know, structured and frankly admirable approach to financial problems. But these sorts of things, I would suggest to you, unfold over time. And our problem isn't that, you know, somebody misspent $10,000 or they didn't get 3 bids. The problem going forward 10 years is that we have not even close to the resources in a general funding sense that it takes to do the job the right way. And so what I would suggest is that, you know, you get with the board after this meeting, and I will sign you up to lead the charge on some of that. Because it's not a bad idea, but it's a lot of work.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I'm Orange Township Treasurer, so. Yeah.
Which one?
Orange Township.
Orange Township. Okay. So you know, so you know the process, and we aren't a township. I think township people are paid. I think you get a salary, don't you?
Yeah, it's very small, it's meager.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the point is, if the electorate here would like to, you know, start, you know, allocating salaries to the 9 people up here, I think you get a whole different, you know, maybe level of professionalism, perhaps. I hope not. I'd like to think we're doing a good job, but you might end up with people that just want the money too. We're here as volunteers, so.
So we recently had to come up to a very difficult decision in the last 30 days. And that was, do we renew the dam insurance or don't we? Because between the dam insurance and lake management, which we went out to bid, and we went out to bid with 5 different vendors on lake management last year, only 3 responded. Between those 2 fees, that takes up our entire 23 budget, leaving the dues as it is. Wow. $37,000 for insurance and $67,000 for lake management. Do the numbers. That's our budget. So where do we get the money to cut the parks? Where do we get the money to pay to fill the holes on Moosehead Park's driveway? Where do we get the money to trim the trees that when you pull your boat out, your boat doesn't get damaged because the branches are arching over the drive at Moosehead Park? Where do we get the money to control erosion? How do we stop fish for our members that enjoy fishing and live on the lake because of that? How do we treat our membership as a whole other than charging per lot dues? How do we treat everybody the same in an organization, in an association, without billing per lot? Those are all the questions that we come up with in our meetings. And one recent meeting, we had to say, do we just focus on water and dam for the next year? Or do we go for an increase and have the projections so that we have the cushion in case we do have a concern in a park?
Or a contingency.
Exactly. So that was the decision we had to make in the last 30 days. Do we insure the dam or not? We made the collective decision. We insure our homes, we insure our vehicles, we insure our toys, we're going to insure the dam. That's why we're here today.
So, thank you for your remarks.
Thank you for your input.
And thank you. Thanks for attending.
John Evans, 310 Driftwood Circle.
Hi, John.
I only got a 9th grade education, but that didn't stop me. I'm still here. I have to ask you a question. At $240 per lot, per year, how much money is that?
So for
ballpark it.
Yeah, it's about $240,000 if you get $1,000.
You guys hear that? $240,000. So why is it that we have to do all this at one time, every year? I live on Social Security. I'm not willing to donate my whole check when you have over $200,000 sitting in. Why can't we do this slowly? Why does it got to be all done at one time? How about making it $15, $20 per lot and keep going it every year? Because if you're getting $200,000 for 1 year, wait a minute, I think that's way over budget. I mean, I don't have a college degree. I'm no dummy either.
John, I get the question, and it's a fair question. It's even a more fair concern because this is all about people's resources and so on. But I will respectfully answer this way. $240,000 sounds like an enormous sum of money. As Sharon already pointed out, we're going to spend almost 40 of that on insurance alone this year. You've got lake treatments that we have kept constrained over the years that could be improved. We are having a very good year, and we've got a new vendor. But the point is that in the past, based on the prior vendors, the only answer was we needed to spend more money on lake treatments. You have to allow for the size of the budget. You're going to need to set aside $70,000 over the next 5 years to accumulate the money that we believe as we sit here today. And we're not guessing. We have. It's not like we're just saying we're guessing. We know from our engineers that we're going to have an order of magnitude expenditure in that time frame. So it's a matter of setting aside the money along the way, and I think that's what we're trying to do. You say that we're not doing it gradually. The alternative, again, would be to do a special assessment and ask everybody to pony up $500, $600 in 1 year. We're not asking that.
But that would probably be outvoted anyway.
That's my point.
Yeah, what I'm saying is if we're going to be getting over $200,000 a year, why did?
Where's it go?
I just think this is the people. It's too much. It's just you're asking too much of us at one time when we can do this for 1/10 of this, even $20 a person.
Well, I think you might be the next board member because if you enjoy it for free that much, you're welcome to join this board.
Well,
John, I'm going to tell you.
We got over $200,000, and then okay, next year now you got $400,000. Where's the stop?
You're
I understand. You can't tell me. Are you saying we're going to be spending over $200,000 a year?
I'm suggesting, based on these numbers, that we are likely going to spend about 170 of the 240 every year.
That's including setting money back for the dam.
No. Then then there's another 70 of that that's set aside for the dam. And we believe that that's a very realistic approach to this.
Okay. Maybe that's why I didn't go to college. I don't know, but that's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money.
Oh, wow, we still got a lot of people left. I thought they all left. First of all, I want to compliment you. I've had a home here since 1993, by the way. Mary Joaquin on Seashell Court. I thought there was going to be a bloodbath here just based on social media that I've been reading, you know, and I noticed that all the people that have a lot to say don't happen to be here today. So compliments to you guys. I know this has been a lot of work. Well, you probably won't be clapping when you hear this next. So I'm probably not going to make any friends here today. To me, $240 annual dues is all I want to look at. I know people that are paying $300 and $400 a month with their association dues. I see brand new boats on the lake. I see people doing additions on their house. I see these beautiful jet skis, and people are complaining about an increase. I'm a single woman. I'm on a fixed income too. My cable's gone up. My fertilizer guy raised my thing $30 every time it comes out, and everything is going up. So we have to presume that the figures we're presented with today, insurance and everything, every year is going to go up. Nothing's gone. Has anything gone down with you guys? I mean, going to the supermarket, have you seen any decreases other than eggs? So I'm just saying we should look at, well, where's the rest of the money going? As long as we have money set aside for the dam, which is our main concern, wouldn't you agree? We, you know, I mean, like everybody said, no water, what the hell? Your house isn't worth anything. So I'm just saying, I know it's a lot of money, and I feel sorry for the backlotters that have got 3, 4, 5 lots. I really do. But I don't see any other way around it. And to suggest, and I don't mean to demean anybody, but to suggest we bring this up every year. Look we're just trying to do this one time. I can't imagine going through this every year. Right. So I'm saying it may be a lot of money, but it's once a year. It's not every month. And I have a slush fund I contribute to every month because I never know what's going to happen with things around my home. And if something comes up and I don't have the money, then I'm in trouble. And I think that's going to be the same thing with our association. So, I mean, as long as we've got money set aside for the dam, whatever extra goes into a fund, whenever we have something in need, we've got the money to pay for it. You don't have to keep coming back to us. So that's just my opinion. It may not be everybody's, but that's just how I feel today. And again, I compliment you. I missed 2 meetings in 30 years of owning a home. And I'm telling you, this is just a delight because I've been to meetings, not counting the one where the police were called a couple years ago. But I've been to meetings where people are yelling and screaming and nothing gets accomplished. Al Walker, I'm sure you're here, and a few other of the ex-board members, you know how the meetings used to be. It was horrible. And so, again, compliments to you guys.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Dave?
Yes.
Mark Fuller, we spoke on
Hi,
the
Mark.
phone last week.
Yes.
Roger, neighbors, Sharon, we spoke a couple times. Thank you all for what you do. I do agree there's a budget. I do agree we gotta look out for the dam, the future of the lake.
I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. A suggestion I guess I have of asking questions of how many lots there are, and thank you, Roger, for giving me details. There's approximately 623 lakefront properties. There's 380 back lots. Now, agreeing that we need more money. I'm an engineer by degree, good at math. If we need that same $240,000 a year, will you as a board have this association vote on a change of cost for backlots and cost for lakefront? I think we all can agree if you own a home on a lake, I have a lakefront home on Waldenwood, I have 4 backlots. There's an advantage to having a lakefront home. You're on the water, your boat can be on the water, you don't have to trailer it in and out, your kids can play in the lake, there's a big advantage. So, like I said, here comes the math. If you have 620 lakefront lots at $300 a lot, and you have 380 non-lakefront backlotters, at half the price, $150, that still gives you $244,000.
Yeah.
So I think there should be agreement that there is a large advantage to having a lot on the lake. So,
what's the difference in the waterfront taxes as opposed to the backlot taxes?
So
from the state.
I paid for the taxes on the whole lot.
Wait. We're gonna.
I will voluntarily answer that. I have 4 lots that sum up to 10.4 acres.
What are you willing to give up for that, for backlotters? What are you willing to
The
give up?
taxes are roughly $800 a year. Now, a cabin on the lake, as we all know, is probably $2,500 to $4,000 a year. So, owning multiple backlots, the cost of dues is actually more than the annual taxes to the county and to the state. So that's where it's something I think that we need to look at and agree that there's a big difference.
Mark, I will say this, that
But if you sell it, you're
yeah.
gonna make a profit.
It's a question and a point that is kind of
I
being.
will not, as a board, on this board, I will not entertain that. Number one, this is an association that everybody needs to be treated whole. You get a vote for each lot you own. This
Sharon.
association, I get a vote for mine. You have the same access to the lake as I do. You may not be able to park a boat on your shoreline, but I do. I pay more in taxes, I paid more for my property. This it's as a whole. I don't believe this is a topic for this meeting. I believe we're talking about a dues increase here.
And I'm for a dues increase. I'm saying an option to get to that same number and pointing out that there's a big advantage from lakefront to non-lakefront. When you have 620 lakefront, 380 non-lakefront. It's just something that should be discussed in the future, and perhaps the association, all of us neighbors, should vote on. That's all I'm pointing out.
Well,
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
at a different time.
My name is Plum, 1695 Springwood Drive. Why did you guys buy 4 lots? So you don't have neighbors, correct? There's advantages of having 4 lots. Just like living on the lake, and there's a lot of backlotters that park their boats on the lake. They walk across the street and use them. So that's your advantage. You get 4 boats instead of 1. So we're equal there. So there's a lot of advantages about having extra lots, and that's your choice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah. So if that's about it, I think we'd like to call for the formal ballots to be turned in. We're going to do our best to get an accurate count before the end of the day or the meeting. We're going to do our best to get that done right now. And anybody that wants to stick around for the results is welcome to. However, it might take a little bit of time. Yes? Absolutely. The results of this will be posted on the website of the vote today. And with that, I'll just call for an adjournment of the meeting. Please turn your ballots in. Please hold on to the proxies if you were given the proxies back. We don't need both. We don't want both. It'll just make work for us. Please return your ballots.